Hello, I'm Diane Birnholz. I talked about the felon named Courtney Alford who allegedly skulked around a sorority house at UC Berkeley for hours on November 1, starting at about 3 a.m., stealing underwear, pizza, and committing extreme violations of privacy by watching girls shower. When he was arrested, he apparently claimed that he was an invited guest. It's funny, no one remembers inviting in this guy with a lengthy rap sheet. Now, this story hits very close to home for me. I also lived in a sorority house in college. It was also off campus, although my house was much smaller than the one at UC Berkeley. So that house has 65 young women living there, and my house only had about 10 to 12 girls. So my sorority house was a historic feeling old house on a busy urban street. It had high ceilings and lots of wood and carpeting and very thick walls. And the point is, it was solidly built and sound did not travel well. The main floor was the living area, and the bedrooms were up on the second and third floors. So there I was, 19 years old, sophomore, and I was out on a weekend evening with a friend or two at a local college hangout bar just about a block from my sorority house. Okay, locals would sometimes go there too, and it was a kind of small and crowded place. And I remember a guy who was older and who was not a college student trying to talk to me. Now, I was always polite, but I was not interested, and I definitely did not encourage this guy. And at some point, I left the bar, maybe because I didn't want this guy bothering me. So I can't quite remember all the details. But my biggest mistake is that I walked home alone. We didn't have cell phones back then, and I was young and I was comfortable walking alone. Plus, it was almost impossible to always have an escort everywhere you went. So my sorority house had a heavy exterior door, then a small foyer, and then the heavy interior door. So we kept the exterior door unlocked, or sometimes wide open. So you'd be in this little foyer as you used your key to open the front door. So I had just unlocked the front door and was just opening it when all of a sudden this guy from the bar was right behind me, and he pushed his way inside my sorority house with me, and then he shut the door. And there I was in the living room of my sorority house alone with a stranger who had just followed me home from a bar, and I was terrified. And I believe that when we're confronted with dangerous life or death situations, our human brains get busy calculating all the different scenarios of how it could play out and the likelihood of survival. So no one was around on the first floor, and I didn't hear anyone else home. My bedroom was directly above the living room, and I knew my roommate was out. So I seriously doubted if anyone would hear me if I started screaming, and I knew there was a good chance a screaming would just get this guy mad. And I kept my distance and always facing him, and I tried to de-escalate. My MO my whole life is to try to keep volatile people from getting angry. So I started talking my way out of this horrible situation. Now, I'm not saying this was as frightening as waking up in the middle of the night with a masked intruder in my bedroom, like what happened in the Berkeley incident, but it was really scary. And I don't know exactly what I said, but I believe it was something along the lines of promising that I'd meet him back at the bar sometime soon. And I think I had to promise it many times. Now, this guy, this intruder, saw a payphone that we had right there in the living room, and he went up and he looked at it. Now, aside from pushing in the front door behind me, he never touched me, and I would have reacted very differently if he had. And I somehow talked him into leaving. Then for weeks, this guy called that payphone at my sorority house asking for me, and he didn't know my name, so he just gave a description. And I was so embarrassed in front of the other girls in my house, and I felt like I had done something wrong, and I obviously never went to that bar again. So I know what it's like to be terrified when there's an intruder in your sorority house. This Berkeley felon took so much away from these girls, including their right not to have anyone watch them shower and not have anyone see or steal their undergarments, and he also took away their right to feel safe in their own home. I thank goodness they weren't physically injured and that I wasn't either all those years ago. Let's hope this Courtney Alford stays in jail a very long time.